It's Wisconsin Today. I'm Kate Archer-Kent.
And I'm Rob Farrett. U.S. stocks dropped sharply for the fourth straight day on Tuesday.
The market's wild swings are reactions to President Trump's broad tariffs on goods coming into this country, unlike any seen in modern American history.
The stock market turmoil can create anxiety for people nearing their retirement years or in retirement now and could lead to hasty decisions.
Emily Guy Birkin is here, a personal finance writer in Milwaukee and the author of 5 books on money management, including Making Social Security Work for You and the 5 Years Before You Retire. Emily, welcome to Wisconsin Today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Well, in this moment, you know so much about personal finance. How are you feeling right now?
This is an odd moment. So I have been writing about personal finance for 15 years. My father was a financial planner, and I've been, kind of immersed in this my entire life. And the current turbulence in the market is unlike anything I've personally ever seen. And we kind of have to go all the way back to 1929 to see something similar. Because when I have seen turbulence in the stock market before, I don't want to call it like natural as if, this is, a fact of nature, but it has followed a kind of a pattern throughout the time that I've been alive and the things that I've, read about in history. Whereas this current market turbulence is a reaction to the president's specific actions. So I personally have never seen anything like this before, lived through anything like this before. So it is concerning. It is something that I can completely understand why everyone who's looking at their 401k balance is going, oh no, what am I going to do? But I do want to reassure people, this is not the beginning of the end. This is not all is lost. This is just something that is different from what we have seen before. That doesn't mean it's not survivable. It doesn't mean that you're going to be unable to retire.
In more recent times, though, you're saying that this is hitting differently than the 2008 Great Recession or even the COVID pandemic.
Yes, absolutely. And so part of the reason why it's hitting differently is because the Great Recession in 2008 came about because of the subprime mortgages and what was going on with that. That was part of pretty much every 7 to 10 years, the market has a correction. It kind of grows and then falls down again. That's not exactly true. We never really had one in around 2015, but this is kind of a cycle that we've seen. And regulations have kind of helped those market cycles being the kind of enormous boom and enormous busts that we used to see before those regulations. So with those market corrections that we saw specifically after 2008, and then what happened with the coronavirus, those fit a little bit more within what we had come to expect in that kind of 7-year cycle. Now, the coronavirus also felt unprecedented to me because I personally had never seen, I don't think anyone had lived through a kind of global event that affected everything in that way. So that one was also felt different to me than the 2008 recession. Whereas with coronavirus, that was, no one single person's actions that caused that. That was a global event that was affecting everything. What's going on right now is very clearly tied to one single person.
So, if you hear the sentiment, oh, just don't look at the investment portfolio. Just wait till this is just blown over before you go back and look at what's happening to your 401k right now. But what if you don't have a decade or a half a decade, to wait for recovery? What do you do?
That's a very tough one. So the people who are approaching retirement right now are understandably biting their fingernails. And so there is some truth to the, just don't look in that, someone who is 62 years old today, planning on retiring in 3 years. Obviously they don't have a decade for all of their portfolio to recover. But the thing is, when you retire in 3 years, you don't need your full portfolio available. you are actually going to keep a good portion of it invested for the long term, because you're going to need money when you're 85 as well. So one of the things to remember is that we tend to think of our portfolios as a little bit like, Scrooge McDuck's vault. So it's just all money there that we can go and scoop up and take and spend when we need it. But the thing is, it's not all in one place. And in fact, it has different timing. So there's some money that you're going to need in 3 years if you're retiring in 3 years, or next month, or anytime in the near future. So there's some money, and that is something where it's understandable you're very concerned. But there is money that you are going to allow to continue to grow for you to access in your 80s and 90s. So you do still have time for recovery, even if your retirement date is tomorrow, because not all of that money is needed tomorrow. And so this is part of the reason why it's so important to switch to more conservative investments for a portion of your portfolio as you get closer to retirement, so that people who were planning on retiring in 2025 may have, in the past 5 years or so, started moving some of their investments to things like bonds that are that are more conservative, or even to things like treasuries and cash equivalents, because those will maintain their principal no matter what happens. And so it is a way to make sure you have money to live on immediately after you retire, even if the market is just bonkers when you retire.
Emily Guy Birkin with us, Milwaukee-based author of personal finance and retirement books. Emily, not everyone does have the 401k. We're all part of the Social Security program. How much is Social Security affected by what's happening in the stock market?
So one of the things that's great about Social Security is that it is a guaranteed retirement benefit. So we don't have to worry about what the market is doing when it comes to Social Security money. And that's because the way Social Security was designed, and it's very elegant, is that it is a direct transfer from current workers to current beneficiaries. And so that means that it does not have ups and downs in terms of investment returns like the stock market does, because it's just going directly from current beneficiaries, current workers to current beneficiaries. And even the Social Security Trust Fund, which is quote unquote invested, it is part of the American government. And so the trust fund, because there were so many baby boomers, they paid into the trust fund, and there weren't enough beneficiaries that needed the money the baby boomers were paying in. They invested that in the trust fund. And by investing it, what it means is that in the same way that when you put money in the bank and the savings account, the bank then turns around and lends it out as a mortgage and earns interest on it. The government lends that money out to different programs and then receives it back with interest. So none of this is dependent on the stock market. And it is something that we can count on Social Security. I like to tell people, if Social Security isn't there for you when you retire, we've got bigger problems than Social Security, like a meteor heading to Earth, that kind of bigger problems.
So you also recommend signing up for a My Social Security account. What does that do?
Yes, absolutely. So the Social Security Administration has a fantastic website. They have been having some problems with it over the past couple of months, but in general, it is one of the best designed government websites that I know of, where you can sign up with the My Social Security account and you can see your own work history, and you will get an estimate of what your monthly benefit will be based on your current work history and assuming a similar trajectory for your income. And you can play around with it and see, what happens if you take Social Security early, what happens if you wait until age 70 to take it, how much a spousal benefit would be, what a widower or surviving child benefit might be if you have a minor child when you retire. So all of these things are there, and that gives you a really good indication of what you can expect from this like guaranteed program, this guaranteed retirement benefits. And so that can really ease a lot of fears and kind of give you a sense of what you're playing with in terms of retirement. Now, that said, I do want to always put the caveat, don't rely on Social Security for your retirement. It's better to consider that as like the gravy on the meatloaf that is your retirement portfolio.
But that perhaps is one account you can be checking right now, knowing it is more stable than what is happening in perhaps your 401k.
Absolutely, yes. It is backed by the full faith of the American government, which is about as close to an absolute guarantee as you can get.
Let's land here on the dreaded R word, recession. After last week, could we be headed toward a recession? What is your take?
The thing about a recession is that economists are always really reluctant to say we're heading to a recession. They start calling it the R word, and act as if it's this terrible, terrible thing. Like not calling it Voldemort. I mean, it's and so I think it is very likely that a recession could be on its way. The thing is, a recession is not the boogeyman. What it is when we are having losing growth over a certain amount of time. And a recession is not great news. It's not something anybody's jumping for joy over, but it is survivable. And it is something where if we look at clear-eyed at the situation and recognize like, okay, this is possible or possibly even likely. So what can I do that can shore up my own finances in case I lose my job, in case I have to be furloughed or something like that. So if you start thinking ahead, you can
get ahead of it.
Prepared. Yes.
Emily, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Emily Guy Birkin, Milwaukee-based personal finance writer.
Coming up on Wisconsin Today, youth sports can be stressful for kids. A Wisconsin Recreation Department wants to change that.
Fun. That's what we're about. We want to return the play back to the kids on the courts.
Youth sports coming up next here on WPR News.
It's Wisconsin Today. I'm Kate Archer-Kent.
And I'm Rob Farrett. Many parents enroll their children in youth sports programs to help them stay active and learn new skills, and that can have lots of benefits for kids.
But youth sports can also come with costs, from expensive pay-to-play programs to injuries caused by focusing on just one sport at early ages.
In her new book, author Dion Kohler says our system of youth sports needs a shakeup and that fun and play need to be at the center of the conversation. She's director of the Center for Sport and the Law at the University of Baltimore. Her new book is called More Than Play: How Law, Policy, and Politics Shape American Youth Sport. Dion, welcome to Wisconsin Today.
Thanks for having me.
You start your book talking about this idea that it's accepted in American law related to youth sports that youth sports is good. It's a thing with just straight up benefits for kids. And that idea, that attitude has shaped a lot of our laws and regulations or lack of same around youth sports. Can you talk about that a little bit and what it means for the reality of youth sports?
Well, I think that's a great place to start because I think that is the sort of starting and ending point for a lot of our law and policy around youth sport. And frankly, as a parent, who had my kids in youth sports, that's the start and ending point for a lot of parents and people involved with youth sports as well, which is, hey, this is a great thing, right? So I don't need to kind of think beyond that. And more is more. My kids should be involved. I should continue to encourage my child to stay involved. And so while youth sport can be a terrific thing, undoubtedly, I've seen it myself. I was a youth sport, I was an athlete And I believe in it and love sports. But that type of kind of simplistic thinking means that we have not really thought through what youth sport in the United States really is today, what it really has become. And so trying to move away from the sort of, isn't this all good, and look with more nuance into today's youth sport experience.
Another core concept is that there's a lot of value created in different ways of measuring value from youth sports, and only some of that value is actually going to the kids themselves. What do you mean by that? How is that value being, in some ways, extracted from kids in youth sports?
Yeah, so the idea of kind of value generation in sports is one that we are very, very familiar with in the United States, of course. Kind of value generation is something that, for instance, professional athletes and their unions negotiate with owners with, right? How much of the revenue are NBA players going to get versus the owners? So the idea of value creation in sports is a common one, but we don't think about it with respect to youth sports. And what I talk about in the book is I say, well, youth sports doesn't create necessarily the kind of professional sports revenues that we see every day when we watch a typical professional sports franchise. Although youth sports is about a $20 billion a year enterprise, but youth sports participation and kids participating in sports creates a lot of benefits actually when you look beyond kind of the profits that the youth sport industry is making. Benefits that I talk about, everything from parents who just enjoy watching their kids perform and go into tournaments and score goals and swim fast, to the Olympic and Paralympic movement who gets the benefit out of a pipeline of kids who become elites at a very early age.
One of the downsides you point out, one of the most pervasive downsides in some ways, is a huge percentage of kids who are involved in youth sports leave youth sports, often because they say, according to surveys, it's not fun anymore. We've taken the fun out of youth sports. How has the system done that to the point where kids are just opting out?
This has been known for a very long time. And what we know from the research, especially from the research done by the medical community, is that one of the reasons why kids walk away from sports is due to burnout. And one of the reasons why they burn out is because of overtraining and early sports specialization. Kids are encouraged to pick a sport, become really, really good at that sport, and then train year round. That is mentally exhausting. It is physically taxing. They end up with what the medical community has called an epidemic of preventable overtraining issues. And so kids find that system can actually just be so mentally and physically exhausting that they walk away. In addition, there are a lot of, and this is well known as well, a lot of sort of unpleasant side effects of youth sports participation, which is parents yelling at coaches, parents yelling at refs, parents yelling at other parents. Kids feel a lot of pressure. It can be really intense and it can really be too much for their developing bodies. And so what the research shows us is that by the time they hit the age of about 12 or 13, they say, I'm done.
I want to turn to some of the worst cases here. There's an attitude, again, in law that, hey, we're going to leave this to parents in the youth sports leagues. And then parents, I think, are expected, in many cases, do put their trust in the coaches and the organizations and things like that. And then we see worst cases in many different sports of widespread abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, or even just wrecking the bodies of young athletes by overtraining. How do we break that cycle of, hey, we trust this organization, and then they, in some cases, sadly betray that trust?
One of the things I try to make clear in the book is that I'm not villainizing youth sport providers or coaches. My husband coached my son's soccer team and did the best he certainly could. But one of the things I point out is that everybody in youth sports kind of has an assumption, isn't somebody else looking out for the kid here, right? To some extent, the system is set up so that parents are, for instance, informed and monitoring their kids for concussions or these overuse injuries. Coaches, we know, are most often volunteers. They're dads or moms who are doing the best they can, but certainly don't have the kind of training and certification that would enable them to spot overuse injuries or know when things have gone too far. What we have with a sort of no regulation environment of youth sports is that everybody's there assuming, well, isn't this okay? And isn't somebody doing a background check on a coach? Parents are surprised when I go out and talk that no, there's for the most part, nobody else is watching. Parents, it's up to you. Similarly, coaches, it's very easy, very low barrier to entry to get into youth sport coaching because there's no government entity, there's no state entity that's saying, hey, we need to make sure that the people who are engaging children's minds and bodies in sports necessarily know what they're doing.
Deanne Kohler is with us. Her new book is More Than Play: How Law, Policy, and Politics Shape American Youth Sport. Deanne, what would a better system look like? What would a kid-centered, maybe fun-centered approach to youth sports look like?
Well, we have some examples from around the world, actually. And interestingly enough, the rest of the world is sort of having conversations about youth sports that we don't often have in the United States. And these are conversations based on a human rights approach, based on a document called the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. This is a document that lays out some kind of fundamental rights for children, and among them is the right to play and the right to safe and developmentally appropriate play. The United States is the only country in the world that has not signed on to this document because of concerns that it could infringe on parents' rights, for instance. So what countries like Norway and other countries have done, European countries, have really looked to this document and said, okay, what do kids need? And they have built a sports system that de-emphasizes in the early years the type of overtraining and early sports specialization we have here, and instead emphasizes the fun and fitness aspects of sports that we know incontrovertibly deliver a lot of benefits to kids. So we certainly can build youth sports differently, and there are many well-meaning youth sport providers who want to do that. But without any level of kind of consistent policy, national or state level regulation, we just don't have an opportunity to kind of operationalize that and scale it up for all kids who get involved in youth sports.
You give multiple examples of when Congress has gotten into youth sports, a very strong emphasis on a hands-off, a low regulation policy on youth sports. So failing that, who would need to take the lead to put this fun and play-centered mindset into American youth sports?
Outside of Congress doing something, states have considerable power in this area and could easily pass legislation. Again, minimum safety standards, not micromanaging T-ball, but minimum safety standards, and states could do that. If parents want to sort of advocate for this, this is a great thing to think about, because one of the things we know about sports in general is that minimum safety standards, minimum guidance about how sports should be certainly doesn't destroy sports. It makes it better for everybody.
Deanne, we'll leave it there. Thanks a lot for sharing your work with us.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Deanne Kohler is the director of the Center for Sport and the Law at the University of Baltimore. She was with us today to talk about her new book, More Than Play: How Law, Policy, and Politics Shape American Youth Sport. Now we're focusing in on youth sports programs in Wisconsin and how they keep things fun for kids. Cable Helmbrecht is the Director of Recreation at the Oshkosh Area School District. He was previously a recreation programmer for the city of Appleton. Cable, welcome to Wisconsin Today.
Thanks for having me.
Can you take us through the kinds of youth sports recreation programs that you offer to your community there in Oshkosh?
Yeah, certainly. Oshkosh Recreation Department is part of the Oshkosh Area School District. So that's a little bit different than most municipal recreations, which are associated with cities or villages. So being in the school district, we have the advantage of being able to reach our families that attend Oshkosh Area School District. So communication is key to promoting the programs that we like to offer here. So we run everything from, basketball and softball camps. We do disc golf, pickleball, some non-traditional sports programming. Running, rugby is a big one that we're partnering with. Tennis, and even things such as golf or bowling. And a lot of this stuff is done through the cooperation of different partners in the area. Like if we don't have an expert on our staff that's able to teach golf or teach kids how to approach bowling or score bowling. Like we work with different people in the community to offer these things.
What do you see as the role, the value of community youth sports for kids?
I think we play a huge role in the value for kids. For one, we've talked about. I know Dion talked about the cost of youth sports and how much 20 billion per year that it generates in revenue. It's a money game. A lot of times, families can't afford to do that, and being a municipal rec or a school district recreation department, that's where I think we, speaking as a field, can really excel and offer a quality program that families can afford. The number one barrier for people enrolling their kids in youth sports is cost. And if they don't have the money, sometimes that opportunity just goes by the wayside. So where we're at is we want to offer a quality program with really highly defined objectives for those programs and those leagues, and then be able to get kids involved without a huge time commitment, without traveling out of city, going and having to worry about paying for meals, paying for hotels, all that stuff. So we keep it really localized, especially for like our basketball league. One practice a week. When you're going to practice, it's going to be perhaps on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. And then you're going to get your one game a week. It's always going to be at the same location. You're not traveling out of city. So we really, bring those costs down for families to be able to get their, that entry point into the youth sports arena.
As we heard, a lot of kids leave youth sports at some point just because it's not fun anymore, the competition, the stress, the pressure, things like that. What do you do, especially maybe at the early ages, to make sure that this is fun for the kids that are involved?
You hit it on the head. Fun. That's what we're about. We want to return the play back to the kids on the courts. Okay. So it all starts with your philosophy as a department. What are we trying to accomplish here? Are we worried about wins and losses? Are we worried about who wins first place in our leagues? No. What we do, we start out, first of all, we try to organize our kids by the school that they attend. So more than likely they're going to be playing with kids they know, their friends. And that's a huge bonus for kids that want to get into youth sports. And if they don't know anybody, that's a barrier. So now we start by promoting, hey, we're going to try to get your child on a team of kids from the same schools. So the fun part of it also comes down to having great staff, people that believe in that philosophy. You have volunteer coaches that we have, that we recruit, but they have to buy into that philosophy that it's not about the wins and losses. It's about the skill development. It's about the friendships that these kids are going to make, teaching them life skills, how to manage adversity, how to work together as a team. All of these great things that happen in youth sports, those are the things that we strive to, and trying to promote that fun aspect, like I said, through the generation of teams, through schools, and then having refs that explain the rules are vested into the program. And then those coaches, they have to be the ones that are with the kids the most, but they are a great conduit for what we're trying to accomplish here.
Talking to Cable Helmbrecht, Director of Recreation at the Oshkosh Area School District. As you talk to people in your community, parents, kids, and beyond, do you sense a hunger for this kind of stuff, the more free play approach to a youth activity?
It's really refreshing, actually, to hear that there is a need and there is a want for that. People don't want to necessarily go and travel out of the city every weekend, or not that there's anything wrong, because there might come a time and place where that's what the child needs. But when we do our youth basketball league, we always send out a follow-up survey to families, and we're clipping in at a 93% satisfaction rate. And just listening to some of the comments, talking to some of the parents at the leagues, they're like, we're so excited that this is an option for their child. He's having so much fun. He's learning a lot. He's making a lot of friends. It's just it's out there, and a lot of people just perhaps don't know that there's different avenues. We're not the only game in town. YMCA offers a great program as well. some lower cost options. But it's kind of refreshing to hear that the positive remarks and the overall satisfaction that we receive from our families regarding our programs.
As we wrap up, Cable, are you looking for help in the community? If people are listening in your area and say, hi, I could coach one of those sports, are you looking for that kind of community support?
Yeah, 100%. We always are looking for coaches that are energetic. And then it's not even necessarily that they need to know about basketball. That's a big fear sometimes, or whatever sport it may be. Is like, I'd really love to coach, but I don't know how to run an offense, or I don't know anything about basketball. And it's like, that's okay. We can help you we offer practice plans, we set things up for them, we reserve spaces for them. So we try to give them all the tools for their toolbox that they'll need. But the biggest thing is just being a positive role model for the kids, having fun with the kids, and just being there and being an active adult in their lives is huge. So yeah, there's plenty of opportunities, not only on the coaching side, but on our staff side, with our refs and things. They're intricately involved in the management of the games and coaching the kids and working with the coaches. So there's opportunities all over the place with us.
Cable, thanks so much for joining us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Cable Helmbrecht is the Director of Recreation at the Oshkosh Area School District. He was with us today for a look at youth sports programs in Oshkosh and how they try to keep fun and play at the center of those sports. Earlier, we heard from author Dion Kohler about her new book, More Than Play, How Law, Policy, and Politics Shape American Youth Sport. Hey, have you participated in, as a player, a parent, coach, ref, a great youth sports program around Wisconsin or beyond? Tell us about it. Email wisconsintoday@wpr.org. That's wisconsintoday@wpr.org.
Still ahead, the Black Harbor Mystery Series is set on Lake Michigan, channeling the subgenre Midwestern noir.
Like the brutal cold, the bone-chilling atmosphere. And I love setting characters in that place to see how they react to those elements and how they react to each other.
The book The Unlucky Ones, that's next on Wisconsin Today. You're listening to Wisconsin Today. I'm Kate Archer-Kent.
And I'm Rob Farrett. It's time now for Wisconsin Life. Here's producer Maureen McCollum with a story about holding on to memories after losing your parents.
We all have these images, these moments from our childhood that stick with us forever. Perhaps it's the day you learned to ride on a two-wheel bike, or a seemingly simple time when you were playing a board game with your brother and sister. For writer Andrew Patry, he's been exploring some of these memories that he says have been cauterized in his mind. He shared the following story at a live Wisconsin Life storytelling event in Eau Claire at the Lakely.
All right, thanks everyone. Thanks BJ, Maureen. This is entitled Built to Last. How about time travel? My friend asks from behind the wheel of his Honda CR-V. Where would you go if you could visit any place in the past? Any place, huh? I ask, stalling for time. It's a Sunday afternoon in late spring. Two buddies and I are crammed into a car on our way home following a long overdue guys' weekend at the lake. Our 48 hours without work deadlines or familial obligations have elapsed. Yet we're not quite ready to let go, and so we've silenced satellite radio in favor of the kind of talk generally reserved for sleepovers. Ask me about time travel a year ago, I might have answered with stepping foot on the set of John Carpenter shooting his seminal slasher film, Halloween. But it's been 10 months since my father died in memory care, and with my mother already gone, I'm officially an orphan. Well, I say when it's my turn to speak, it ain't the building of the pyramids, but I think I'd want to go home again. Where I grew up, I mean. Drop in for a few hours. I imagine it's 1988, a late Saturday afternoon in November. early dusk, just an ordinary day, which when visited through the dust of time, now seems a little extraordinary too. Outside of my childhood home, the branches are bare, the leaves bagged and lined up on the boulevard. There's a breath-fogging chill in the air. Inside, the house is warm. I'm 13 and perusing the shelf in my bedroom, a row of VHS tapes onto which I've recorded horror films from HBO. Night of the Creeps, Reanimator, Dead Time Stories. I grab a tape and head to the living room, the lamplights honeyed glow all around me. I insert the tape into the VCR, a machine which lasted until well after I moved out, made when everything, even parents, seemed built to last. The curtains are drawn and I am alone, though I can hear my mother in the kitchen, filling the dishwasher, apron still sashed to her waist. I can feel my father's vibrations from his workshop below me, the sawdust like dander in his hair. I catch the scent of Pepper, our family dog, in the blanket I shove over on the couch. It is enough knowing they're around. I don't need to see them. I might press pause and never want to leave. I know to resist the tug of the past. Grief is the ghost light that calls us to shore and then wrecks us over the rocks. Yet I might have stayed in that memory all afternoon if the bumpy road hadn't jolted me back to the car with my friends. All is quiet, save for the engine's hum. I try to change the mood, but grief is also the light that reveals life's invisible ink, that common frailty scribed into our DNA. I can't keep from thinking there'll come a time when even these sojourns to a buddy's cabin up north will taper off, when our numbers too will gradually dwindle. I close my eyes, refusing to travel too far into that future. Better to stay in the moment, feel the car wheels in motion beneath me, pretend we're all still built to last.
Andrew Patry shared that piece, Built to Last, at a live storytelling event in Eau Claire at the Lakely. It was hosted by WPR's Wisconsin Life and the Chippewa Valley Writers Guild. To hear Patry's full story and learn why he's digging into these cauterized memories, go to wisconsinlife.org or check out the Wisconsin Life podcast. Wisconsin Life is a co-production of Wisconsin Public Radio and PBS Wisconsin in partnership with Wisconsin Humanities. Additional support comes from Lowell and Mary Peterson of Appleton. I'm Maureen McCullum.
This is Wisconsin Today.
Drugs and crime are running rampant in the fictional Wisconsin town of Black Harbor, set on the shores of Lake Michigan.
And now there's another grisly murder and a new toxic street drug called zombie that local detectives are trying to deal with.
We're talking with Milwaukee author Hannah Morrissey about her creative process and what goes into creating a gritty whodunit. Her fourth book in the Black Harbor suspense series is called The Unlucky Ones. Hannah, welcome to Wisconsin Today.
Thank you, Kate.
You use the term Midwestern noir to describe these books. What is this subgenre like, considering that the Midwest has this perception that it's a friendlier place than other parts of the country?
Oh, yeah. Actually, you're the first person who's mentioned that because, yeah, we get the Midwest nice, but in my books, it's the Midwest not so nice. Yeah, so Midwestern noir is this sort of subgenre that my books have carved out for themselves. People on, like, mostly online and on Bookstagram have been calling them Midwestern noir. And it's this idea that when you take Scandinavian noir, which is like the original genre, those books, when you look at the elements of them, they're very crime-ridden, very violent, often in very cold settings, very remote settings. And my thoughts were that we have all of that here in the Midwest. So we have, the cold, the remote, like we certainly have the atmosphere. And, I just wanted to bring that bring those elements of Scandinavian noir here in the Midwest.
So you find the cold winters and you find some cold-hearted people. And then Black Harbor, sitting on the shores of Lake Michigan, really bleak place. Can you explain it for us?
A lot of times people would ask me why create like a fictional town and why not just use an existing city or an existing town? And for me, it's like Black Harbor, it takes elements of a lot of, cities that I know. I think cities that a lot of us might be familiar with, for better or certainly, for worse in this case. But it's that idea that it's kind of in every town, and that as bleak and as bad as Black Harbor is, we all can relate and we can be like, I've been there before, or I've seen that place. And it makes it a little bit relatable. But with Black Harbor, I'm so fascinated with these places like set on the shoreline of Lake Michigan. And I like, particularly the eroding shoreline. And we have the piers where like the lake is just, absolutely savage sometimes, the way that she crashes against these piers, and she has a rip tide and she's dangerous. And we get the cold lake effect coming in with just like, it punches through buildings. And I just love like the brutal cold, the bone chilling atmosphere. And I love setting characters in that place to see how they react to those elements and how they react to each other. And there's a line in the book in one of the books of, Black Harbor's that place that if the people don't kill you, the elements will.
And the city is fighting and losing a drug war all across town. How are toxic street drugs taking over this fictional city?
Yeah, for sure. So The Unlucky Ones it is dramatically different than the other three in the series, and that this one does not take place in the bone-chilling winter. Instead, we've got the scorching Wisconsin summer. And my publisher asked, could it be warm in this one? Could we have a warm book? And I said, yes, but it's not going to be warm and it's not going to be sunny and 75. It's going to be an insufferably hot Wisconsin summer. And in that insufferably hot Wisconsin summer, we have, violent crime is up because crime trends upward with the temperatures. And we also have, in the midst of this violent crime, we have a new drug called Zombie with an X that's raising the streets of Black Harbor. And it's certainly an epidemic. It was something that I learned when I moved to the southeastern part of the state, of just how rampant the drug epidemic is. And particularly in my area, I'm like the Racine, Milwaukee, Kenosha area. There's a lot of like heroin and cocaine. And in Black Harbor, we see the heroin, we see the cocaine, but fentanyl is something that's extremely dangerous, very fatal. And the way that people are mixing these drugs, like these new concoctions, are even more dangerous because now the medicines are not working against them because they're not true opioids. They're like synthetic opioids. So there's another line in the book too, like you overdose, you die.
Yeah. And Sergeant Nikolai Cole is trying to fight this drug war. And at one point, it's so interesting. He thinks Narcan, the opioid reversal, is like a Band-Aid, and that it's just not saving lives in Black Harbor, which I found really interesting because it was certainly overlapping with real life issues.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to give him a conflict of, yes, he knows that, Narcan will potentially bring somebody back to life. However, in his experience, he's seen that they administer Narcan and it's the same person like 8-9 times. So from his perspective, they are losing the war on drugs in Black Harbor because, they're seeing the same people fall prey to it. And he's like, it's enabling the city to not put in serious resources that are actually going to combat the problem. Whereas, they're basically slapping a Band-Aid on it.
taxidermy makes this book a whole lot scarier, and like, these animal eyes staring back at your characters. Did you read up on taxidermy to write about it, or why taxidermy?
Oh, yeah. Taxidermy surprised me as an element in the third book, When I'm Dead, was when taxidermy kind of really came about. I mean, we do see it in Hello Transcriber, the first book, because, Hazel's husband at the time is into, hunting. And, there's a line in The Unlucky Ones about how, this is Wisconsin. And a lot of people's idea of interior decorating is putting a dead deer head on the wall. And it's really, I'm fascinated because I'm like, I think it's kind of morbid that we do that. Like that we, hunt animals and, put their carcasses on our walls or on our mantles. But it's so widely accepted. And yeah, taxidermy really came up as a strong element in book 3, When I'm Dead, and continued throughout The Unlucky Ones. And I did do a lot of reading. I know more about different kind of fills and like using sawdust than I ever cared to know. And also YouTube. Like YouTube is amazing.
Hannah Morrissey is with us, Wisconsin-based mystery author of the Black Harbor series. Latest one in the series is called The Unlucky Ones. How do you map out a whodunit as a suspense writer? Do you know going in like who will die and who will commit the crimes, or do they unfold for you as you write more?
Yeah, loosely I know. I am not a plotter. I sometimes wish I was, but it's like you said, the story like unfolds. I'm like a discovery writer where the story unfolds or it reveals itself to me the more I write. And sometimes like The Unlucky Ones, I knew right away I'm killing Tommy. Like that's how the book opens. I got to have this banger opening. It's Hazel's ex. It's going to bring her back. So yeah, I knew he was going to die. But I often it's rare that I know who done it, or I end up changing my mind, which I'm actually always like very happy when that happens. It can be frustrating, but I'm like, it always works out great when I change my mind, because I'm like, I've probably written this book maybe all the way through or 3/4 of the way through thinking it was this person and realizing it was somebody else. But, I was so convinced that it was this other character that now I've convinced the reader that it was too. So then I can have like a pretty good twist.
I love it. Hannah, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Kate. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for reading the book. This was awesome.
Hannah Morrissey is the author of the Black Harbor suspense series. It is set in the fictionalized, crime-ridden Wisconsin city of Black Harbor on the shores of Lake Michigan. And the Wisconsin author's 4th novel in this series is called The Unlucky Ones.
We just got a taste of Hannah Morrissey's suspense fiction set in Wisconsin, and now we want to hear from you. Is there a book, a TV show, or a movie set in the Midwest that you are a big fan of?
And scary or nice, do you think that fictional version of the Midwest matches up to reality?
Tell us about it. Email wisconsintoday@wpr.org. That's wisconsintoday@wpr.org. Or you can call or text us. The number is 888-642-0232. Again, 888-642-0232.
Wisconsin Today producers include Rochelle Wilson, Lauren Cox, and Royce Podeswa. Our technical directors are Sarah Hopeful and Tyler Ditter.
Tim Peterson is managing producer. Dean Knetter is our executive producer. Learn more about us at wpr.org/Wisconsin Today. I'm Rob Ferret.
And I'm Kate Archer-Kent. You're listening to WPR News.